Welcome to After Six. Todd Feinberg, thanks so much for tuning in. Joining us now is State Senator Rob Sampson. He's here every week because he's so cool. He's so principled. He's a real live conservative who stands up for conservative values in Hartford, which is not a very common thing. Rob, how are you?
I'm doing great. Glad to join you, Todd.
We have a ton to work through today. So let's get started. Immigration. Tell me something good.
Just the other day, I've been warning that this is one of the big issues that people in our state need to be aware of, but doesn't seem to get a lot of news coverage. But we are a sanctuary state. Not a lot of people know that. But just the other day, the Judiciary Committee in the legislature passed a bill that, if it becomes law, would actually expand us into being a super sanctuary state, more of a sanctuary state than California, in fact.
Wow, that's exciting to beat California.
Yeah, and not in the best way. What this bill would actually do is expand something called the Trust Act, which essentially restricts our local law enforcement authorities from communicating with the federal authorities when it comes to apprehending, detaining, people that are in the country illegally. And when the Trust Act was passed back in 2013 in Connecticut, there were provisions in there to say that, well, for the real bad apples, people that are felons or they're gang members or they're on the terrorist watch list, something like that, we would still cooperate with ICE. This bill that passed on a party line vote out of the Judiciary Committee just last Wednesday removes those exceptions, basically putting those people, those bad apples, above the law. And, the thing to note is that they are not just a danger to the citizens of Connecticut, but they're also a danger to those same undocumented aliens that they live amongst.
Sure. I mean, why would you encourage more crime and punishment to come into the country?
Yeah, it's madness. And, the thing is, the Democrats always try and take the moral, high ground on this issue, as if anyone that speaks against illegal immigration is a bigot or a racist or something like that. But they seem to be perfectly satisfied with people living in the shadows, concerned about whether they're going to be apprehended because of their status, working under the table, basically being second-class non-citizens. And to me, that's not the answer. What we need is some, actual action on the federal level to fix it. But what we need in Connecticut is to follow the rule of law to protect our citizens.
And to for that to be the default position of every elected official would seem to be a basic requirement, that you are standing there fighting for the rule of law. And by the way, what you just said about this not being a compassion-based thing, it's totally ruthless. They just want the more money you get from having more people living in your poor neighborhoods that comes in from the federal government. It's totally a power play.
Yes, there's a tremendous amount of benefit for Democrats politically. It's a chance for them not only to, affect policy based on those types of things, but also it's a chance to whack Republicans and to perpetuate the myth that somehow to be a Republican means that you must be a white male bigot.
Which is so ridiculous. It would, if Republicans had any cojones, it would take about 5 minutes to correct that. The idea that you could ever state such a thing and have people not laugh. There is nothing more hateful than having a bankrupt state, for example. There's nothing more hateful than promising people benefits that you can never pay them and doing nothing about it when you get to crisis except trying to raise taxes on people who are already living in the second highest tax state in the country.
I couldn't agree more. It's madness. They are perpetuating a dependent state. They are not benefiting anyone's future opportunity with their policies. Our way is the right way, and I'm going to keep preaching it, and I thank you for doing the same.
All right, what should we talk about next?
Happy to talk about, there's some breaking news. I don't know when you're going to air this.
It will be after the witching hour.
Okay, good. Well, I just became aware recently that the deputy leader of the House Republican caucus in the state legislature has sent a letter, a very important letter, to the Senate majority leader and the Speaker of the House, stating that the Transportation Committee, the very same Transportation Committee that recently passed 3 bills in favor of tolls out of that committee last Wednesday, has too many senators on it and is in violation of the joint rules that the 4 caucuses agree to. There's supposed to only be a maximum of 9 senators on that committee, and there are 10.
Wait, where is that? Where is that written?
It is in Mason's rules, which we use, and there's also joint rules that are adopted by the 4 caucuses at the start of the legislative session. And
so there's this guy Mason who made the rules. He made a rule that this particular committee could only have 9 people on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically Mason sets up the process for determining these rules, but it's under Senate Rule 18.
Under those guidelines.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Is he the same guy who makes the jars for putting up preserves?
I don't believe so, no.
Because it's quite a multifaceted enterprise he's got going. He's a real tycoon.
Indeed. Well, I mean, most legislative bodies are run either under Robert's rules or Mason's rules.
Yep.
And that's what determines, how votes are taken and motions are made and so forth.
Oh, all those intricacies of process that the average citizen has such admiration for.
Well, sadly, most legislators don't have any real idea about those rules either. And I will tell you, it's been a big advantage to me to have some idea, at least, about how the rules work, to know when amendments can be offered and to know when to object and to be right.
All right, Senator Sampson. So tell us about this revelation that there are too many people on the Transportation Committee. What is the significance? Why should we care?
Well, the issue is that the Transportation Committee is the committee that has oversight over the toll bills that are going through the legislature. And it's quite clear when you look at the fact that there are 10 senators on that committee and the makeup is 7 Democrats to 3 Republicans.
Wait, is that the same proportion as
no, it's not even close.
The overall legislature?
Yeah, I mean, the Senate right now is 22 to 14, which is a little less than 2 to 1. So therefore, you would say that even 6 to 3 is not even an accurate depiction. But
right.
7 to 3 is clearly stacking the committee. And I believe the Democrats did that on purpose to make sure that the toll bills were going to make it out of there without any incident. Now, of course, they passed a little more easily than that. But that's not the point. The point is that they should never have put more than the allotted number of people on that committee, and they should not be stacking the committees. I mean, that means there's an extra senator debating the bills, too.
But this is a joint committee, right?
That is correct.
So that would mean somehow you would use an average of the percentage. It would be the overall percentage and between the 2 chambers, right?
Well, the way the committee debates and votes break down is done in a joint fashion, but it can always be divided. And that was a common practice in previous years, like last year when the House, where the Democrats did have a majority of 4 or 5 seats, but the Senate was tied. It was common practice to divide the committee and take the votes separately, because if it would pass the House members, that's fine, but if it didn't pass the Senate, the bill would still die.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. So they do the work together, but the votes are as if they're separate. That's
correct. And in generally speaking, we vote together. All the House and Senate members vote together on each of the bills. But when it looks like there is an issue where the outcome will be different because of the makeup of the chambers, it is good politics and good administration for somebody to speak up and say we should divide the committee on this vote.
Now, this news just broke at 5 o'clock, so this is new, and it's hard to know how we got to this place, I assume. We don't know if maybe somebody agreed to this setup.
I don't know exactly what happened to get us to this point. I don't even know the process. I have always assumed that the makeup of the committees was based on the relative proportions of Democrats and Republicans in the chamber as a whole. So I'm surprised to see that this happened, but I don't really know how it did. But I do know it is in violation of the rules, and I do know that the House Republican leadership is complaining about it.
Now, you would assume if there is an extra senator on the committee that means that everything the committee has done thus far should be started over.
Right. And I think that's the point in Representative Candelore's letter, is that the votes that have already been taken are void, that this situation needs to be corrected immediately before any more action can be taken. And it's especially interesting because I don't know exactly what the deadlines for the Transportation Committee are, but I would imagine it's relatively soon. So if they were to have to go back and redo everything that has been done, it might actually present a problem for them to actually get another vote on tolls.
I'm sorry, explain that another way. Why would it be difficult to get another vote? They can do whatever they want, can't they?
Well, no. There are rules that are agreed to, which is the subject of this conversation. And one of those rules is that there are deadlines for the committee. There are deadlines for certain types of concepts and ideas to be raised, deadlines for public hearings to be held on those particular issues, and deadlines for votes to report those bills out of committee favorably.
So
and
every measure being considered is on a similar timeline?
That is correct.
And all this legislating has to be wrapped up by a particular date?
That's correct.
Which
and
is
I'm
what?
Sorry that I don't know what the deadline for transportation is. Every committee has a different deadline.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I don't serve on the committee, so I don't know.
So there's 10 senators on the Transportation Committee, and
that is
it's
correct.
7-3, which doesn't reflect the fact that they've got a 4-seat advantage. Is that what it is? No, 8-seat advantage.
It is 22-14 right now, which is a little less than 2-1 ratio. And 7-3 is clearly much more than 2-1.
Yeah. And on the House side, is there a similar problem, or is it just on the Senate side?
It looks to me like the numbers of the House members on the Transportation Committee are accurate and close to the appropriate proportions.
Yeah, this is a really interesting problem, Rob Sampson, because if the Democrats have been cheating and took the vote on the Transportation Committee last week to move ahead with tolls by having a disproportionate number of senators serving on that committee, that would be cheating on the part of the good government compassion crowd. And that would require, because they are so compassionate and so filled with good government, that they use their majority to ignore the fact that they cheated and just move ahead with whatever's been done. Wouldn't you think?
I agree completely, and that's why I'm bringing it to your attention, because I believe that those votes need to be taken over again. The action that's been taken was taken in error. I don't want to accuse anyone of fraud, but somebody had to know when they put those number of folks on the committee that they were in violation of the rules, and that's why we have rules. If we're not going to follow them, then what good is the legislative body to begin with?
Okay, the fight on tolls. What else do we need to know? Were you in Southington last night?
I was in Southington last night. The Southington Town Council met, and there's a Democratic majority there. A motion was made by a member of the Republican minority to pass a resolution, as a lot of towns have, to say that they were opposed to tolls. But that was shot down. The council voted not to take up the matter on a party line vote, which kind of gives us an indication of how they might have voted on the ultimate resolution. But
the Speaker of the House, Joe Arasimowicz, was there, I assume, to be able to kneecap this proposal, because there is a feeling that I have anyway, and maybe you share it, that the resistance is starting to scare Democrats a little bit. And the fact that there have been several communities that have voted to give a signal of thumbs down to the idea of tolls, that must weigh heavy on certain members of the legislature.
I agree completely. I think it's working. I think our efforts, Todd, to stir up the public and make them aware of just how dangerous this tolls proposal is, how unneeded it is. What we need is people in government with good priorities, better decisions to actually take care of our roads and bridges. It can be done with the current revenue streams. We do not need to enable our state government to tax and spend more than they already do. People are becoming aware of this, and I think we are seeing results. I think that there is more and more interest in the public every day. There are rallies nearly every day. You see these towns coming up with these resolutions. There's tremendous pushback. And I will tell you that when you start to see a few Democratic legislators peeling off the apparent mandate for tolls that the Democrats have, I think you're going to see the floodgates open. So we've got to keep the pressure on. I think we can actually stop this.
I want to keep the pressure on. I also want to pick a second front to fight, and I'm torn over what it should be. There's so many bad things the Democrats are doing that I assume there's some we haven't even thought about yet or haven't come to our attention.
Right. Well, that immigration issue we started the conversation with, I think, is one of the most important things that is happening in our state that very few people are aware of. It's going to bring more crime and violence into our state. The Connecticut Democrats have taken it upon themselves to make Connecticut a magnet for illegal immigration. We are one of the most friendly states. We offer driver's licenses to illegal aliens. We offer in-state tuition. There is a multitude of entitlement benefits that you can sign up for where they don't ask your status. I think that it's well known among the undocumented community that Connecticut is a place to go if you want to, feel as safe as you can in America where you're not supposed to be. The problem with that is it also brings the criminal element with them, because among this population are terrorists, drug traffickers, human traffickers, gang members, potential terrorists. We cannot have these people living under our community. It generates a tremendous amount of cost to the state of Connecticut. There is a study that I have been sharing online that shows that it's over $1 billion. The study was $1.18 billion in 2017. The cost to the state of Connecticut for illegal immigration. And they factor in everything. They factor in that, illegal aliens are, inside our economy. They are spending some money. They are paying sales tax and so forth, but they don't pay for many things. They certainly can't work lawfully, so they're not paying income tax. It's a dangerous, dangerous problem, and it's exacerbated by our state policies, which seem to ignore the rule of law. Again, a conversation we keep having.
So, how do you know about this? Kind of a technicality, but people working here illegally, I assume they just use somebody else's social security number, but you're suggesting they're working under the table. Do we know numbers on that?
I don't know them personally, but there are many studies that have been done that claim to be able to document the number of folks living in our state because of the type of services that they're using. I mean, we can certainly find numbers on how many driver's licenses have been, provided to undocumented folks. Some of our cities, New Haven has the Elm City ID card, which is an ID card that they actually provide to people in the country illegally. There are numbers of these, so you can track the number of people living in the state without documentation.
You mentioned that there's information on your website. That's SenatorRobSampson.com?
It is just SenatorSampson.com.
SenatorSampson.com. That's great. It's simple, easy to remember. Everybody driving home will just be saying that in their sleep tonight.
I hope you're right. On that page, I'm actually sharing something that is excellent, Todd. It's got a tremendous amount of shares on Facebook. And basically what it is a way to refute the claims of your friends and neighbors who say that tolls are a good idea. People keep saying the same things all the time. They say every state around us has tolls. How else are we going to pay to fix our roads and bridges? Well, there's a transportation lockbox now, so of course the government has to do it the right way. I don't have a problem paying to use the roads. People say these same four things to me over and over again. And, I don't disagree with those statements, except when you understand the facts about what is really happening, you're going to change your mind. So I actually put those facts right there on SenatorSampson.com. As soon as you get there, you're going to see a big banner that says no tolls on it. Read that, share it with your friends and neighbors, and they will join our fight against tolls.
All right, Rob Sampson. So when you come back next week, please have a jingle for the website domain so we can really promote it. Because if people, I'm sure you notice some of our advertisers have jingles, and it just makes it so much more memorable if you have a melody. Will you work on that?
I will.
We'll see what we can do here as well. All right, Rob Sampson, great to talk with you. As always, we'll see you next week, and thanks so much for filling us in.
Thank you, Todd.
That's it for After 6 today. Stay tuned. We've got news coming up next. I'll see you tomorrow at 3. And after news, Clark Howard on WTIC News Talk 1080. See News Talk